Hello and welcome to Taking Flight. Today's episode is about data to decisions, mastering business intelligence for strategic growth. My name is Victoria Wasinger, and I'm the program director for the entertainment business and business intelligence programs here at Full Sail University. And I have three very special guests with me here today. We'll start with Dustin Posey to my right. He is a strategic project analyst at MOBA Corp, and he's also a two-time Full Sail grad, graduating from the Audio Production Bachelor's Program in 2018 and the Business Intelligence Master's in 2019. Thanks for being here, Dustin.
Glad to be here.
Also joining us online, we've got Bryce Perez. He is a Web3 customer engineer at Google Cloud. He is also a business intelligence graduate from 2016. Welcome, Bryce. And last but certainly not least, we've got Dr. Rebecca Leese. She is the program director for the computer science and user experience programs here at Full Sail. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, to get us started, if y'all don't mind sharing a little bit about your background and just your general experience in the area of business intelligence. Dustin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I've been in business intelligence now for about 6 years, and really what I've done over that time is try to bring business intelligence and things that were it used to be reserved for larger corporations, and make those same tools available for the small businesses in the world, and had quite a bit of success with that. Being able to utilize the Microsoft platform.
Awesome. Great. Sounds like you're a very important person at your job. Thank you. And Bryce, if you don't mind sharing next about your experience.
Sure. I serve as a cloud customer engineer at Google Cloud for digital assets and Web3 organizations such as organizations like Bakkt or even Circle or even things that related to blockchain. Act as a technical lead, I take on complex projects and lead technical strategies, use data insights to collaborate with customers and help them understand their business objectives.
Wow, that's awesome. Great. And last, I wanted to talk about Dr. Rebecca. So if you could share a little bit about how long you've been at Full Sail and then also your professional experience.
Awesome. Yeah. So I've been with Full Sail for about 6 years now, and my background includes safety critical training in simulation environments. But I've also served as a data scientist for various companies, and then I also actually use a lot of the stuff that I learned in my doctoral degree, using natural language processing to determine skills and abilities that are most appropriate for students, which I now use in my day-to-day job.
Wonderful. Well, as you can see, we have quite a powerhouse group here. So we're going to have a really exciting conversation today. To get us started, Bryce, if you don't mind answering this question, can you please describe the role business intelligence plays in your day to day strategic decision making?
Yeah, I guess leveraging BI tools and cloud technologies is where I'm focusing on being in Google Cloud. Usually, I'm helping organizations help design and implement solutions to transform their raw data into actionable insights. So, helping those customers develop data pipelines, creating intuitive dashboards, data products for their clients and their customers, really understanding who their customers are, and then allowing them to wrangle in some of the sources that continues to sprawl out and then becomes chaos, and I help them, I guess, organize that chaos and utilize analytics to inform strategic decisions.
Awesome. And I think, so Dustin, you know a little bit about that chaos, right? If you don't mind kind of talking about how you can use BI to optimize operations and improve performance.
Yeah, so being able to utilize these business intelligence tools like Power BI and things, it really gives company a bird eye view on things like their inventory, their on hand inventories. Being able to provide better on time delivery performance for customers, and even a better look at their finances. It gives people that availability to be able to see things that before may be buried down, right? And all of a sudden, you're able to see that stuff and get notified immediately.
Okay, awesome. And so, just to kind of piggyback on both of your answers, you both work for larger companies, but would you say that these things are possible even for kind of like a mom and pop shop? If somebody out there has their own small business, that these tools are still going to be useful to them?
Yeah, I think even more than ever. I think access is becoming the key game changer. And I think small businesses are getting more intuitive about how they use some of the tools that are evolving and allowing them to quickly scale, especially with a lot of the BI cloud applications that are there. So I think that is a key thing for small business to understand is that it's there for them as well.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, I would say that, and that's one of the beauties. It really doesn't matter which business intelligence tool you're looking at. You don't have to have a fancy ERP or something to connect it in. They really just kind of go into whatever you initially have. And I've even seen companies building them off of Excel spreadsheets before that they keep. So there's always a good place to start, and then you can grow from there.
Great, awesome. So, and you both kind of talked about dashboards, and so I know Rebecca's program hits on that as well. Can you tell us a little bit about how computer science plays a role in shaping these decisions and working with the data?
Yeah. So a lot of times within data science and computer science, particularly, a lot of times there will be tools that are readily available for you, something like Power BI or Tableau. However, what we're focusing in on in the computer science masters is understanding the underlying technology, whether what are the functions doing, so that they can build a tool like Power BI or like Tableau.
Awesome. Okay, great. So, Bryce, I want to move into talking a little bit about strategy, more strategy and decision making. Could you tell us how you see BI influencing strategic decision making at the executive level?
Yeah, yeah. I think executives tend to not get as much credit as needed. They have a tough job, and in my role, I consult with them often, internally and externally. Execs need to see a big picture and make the right calls. So, in BI, it's like giving them a crystal ball, but it's real data. So it's not magic, but it can feel like magic sometimes. With data products, dashboards, and reports, they can see exactly what's happening across the company if it's done right. That's the need for business user being able to use these products, but also professionals like data scientists. For example, like Google Cloud, we help our clients optimize cloud costs. So just usually using certain tools like cost optimization, and by analyzing certain resources been used, executives can make like smart decisions, smart choices of where to invest, save money, improve performance, drive user behavior and value. That's a huge thing. Organization at scale, the sources start to increase, the method of how that data is collected and storage is big, and the data is important to business metrics. So I think that execs have a huge part to play when they implement their BI strategy.
Thank you.
Can
Do,
I piggyback off of that? I
yes,
think
please.
I think that there's a lot to be said also for somebody who is really good at doing the visualizations in a way that is easily and quickly digestible by the C-level execs. That's something that I think that a lot of people forget when they're putting together visualizations that really kind of separates the good from the great, right? So I think that's a fantastic point, Bryce.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
the way I see that as well is that there's kind of different visualizations for different audiences, right? So you can have the more streamlined ones that are ready for execs, so they get a really easy view on the things that are going on with, say, the finances or whatever it may be. But then on the other side of it, you can make these really detailed operational type dashboards that can be used by different end users and departments, so that it can really streamline their day to day job as well. So.
Awesome. I know that that's something that we really focus on in a lot of our classes is, first of all, the tools and the techniques that strategic analysts should use to then communicate to the executives, but then also how to change your communication for depending on the audience. There's technical audiences, and then there's going to be more, not to insult the executives, but maybe audiences that aren't as technical but still need to have the information to make those decisions. So I actually, moving into that topic, could you talk a little bit about the techniques that you're seeing used, and how do you adjust depending on the audience?
Yeah. So trying to think. Yeah. So yeah. Let's give an example here. I guess it'd probably be the easiest way for me, right? So I have several different dashboards that are used with the different employees within the organization, right? So we would take something to say maybe the manufacturing manager would use within the plant. So he has oversight on what his employees are doing, maybe what their productivity is, maybe what the costs are, how long the builds take to do to make sure that everything can go out in time, right? And then as for the salespeople, they have a completely different dashboard. And then from an operational standpoint, up in strategic projects, we would have different things we would look at. I think from the tools that the people use within the organization are going to be a lot different than what we would present, right? And what I try to do, I guess, is just try to condense that and make it more absorbable.
Okay. And you talked about earlier that you're in the Microsoft world.
Yeah.
So do you have a favorite tool that you use?
Well, yeah, Power BI, and I'm a big proponent for D365, right? So being able to have everything with on the Dataverse, connect tools like Power Apps to that, so that allows us to make custom apps to distribute throughout the organization, so that we can get user input in. And then, of course, all that feeds directly into Power BI, which lets us have real-time insights on what's going on across, right? So we have our ERP, our applications, and then our everything works seamlessly together, and it's really amazing for what could be done in a small business with those.
And Dustin has no affiliation to Microsoft. He just really likes them a lot.
Yeah, really like them.
So I'm curious, Bryce, do you have a favorite tool that you like to use?
I'm usually pretty open to a lot of different things because I feel like Google is approach things in a way where we're agnostic. We're willing to play well with a lot of different tools that can plug into BigQuery. And I guess your visuals and your visualization, your data store is not as good as your data. So your underlying data, where you store your data. And then that process of utilizing certain languages such as SQL and Python to get that information out of that data, and then cleaning it up and allowing it to go to certain tools like Looker. Looker is basically our Tableau, our Power BI at Google, which works well with other clouds. But and at Google, we are trying to make it more focused on not only just being a BI tool, but having the ability to control the governance of your data, the semantic layer, in a sense, how that information is controlled and manipulated across organizations. So I would say predictive analytics is a great technique and something that we continue to promote as well to help spot out patterns. Forecasting is always a thing that people want to do and want to be able to use the data or BI with.
Absolutely. And Rebecca, I know that he just used some things that your students learned about in your program. So if you don't mind talking, I know, like maybe Python and SQL.
For sure. Yeah, so Python is usually the language of choice that we focus in on, particularly related to data science and AI related tasks. It's a language agnostic degree, so it really just depends on the type of task that they're working on. But for a lot of the data science stuff, we focus in on Python because it's a really easy and useful language for data science. The other thing too that we do that's a little bit beyond what you might experience in the business intelligence masters, but will experience in the computer science masters, is that you might build out your own dashboard. So there are tools like Power BI and Tableau. We talked a little bit about those, but they might also do things like, connect to a, relational or non-relational database, depending on what they need. They might use SQL, they might not use SQL, they might use no SQL. And then on top of that, they will use that data from the databases and build out a dashboard. It could be in something like Plotly Dash or Flask. And then using that, they can deploy their dashboard with something like MongoDB or Hadoop.
Okay. And so for our viewers at home who are like, what are these words and what are these tools? Say I'm somebody who just knows Excel and I'm interested in getting into the space and learning more about it. Is that enough of a foundation to kind of get into this area, or do I need to learn something else?
I would say Excel is a perfect foundation, right? And if you could be a wizard Excel, you can be a wizard in business intelligence. And I also think another important thing to remember is a lot of times when people think of business intelligence, they always picture the end tools, right? They always picture the Power BI or the Tableau visualization. But the reality of it is business intelligence is the whole process, right? It's the data structure that runs those tools. It's the processes that are put into place. Because without those pieces properly put in, those visualizations don't come together, right? So it's really important to understand that those visualizations that people see, those are the end product of all the things that go in to make that, right? And yeah.
Thank you.
I would also say Excel is usually like a really great reason to go into. Like if you really enjoy Excel and you just want to explore Excel, especially explore Excel macros, that's usually a good in to start your business intelligence career.
Yeah, and a lot of tooling is plug and play too as well. So you can take those spreadsheets, CSV files, whether it's Excel or Google Sheets, and you can plug them to a lot of these tools such as Tableau, Power BI. Looker Studio is a free tool. A lot of the times people see a barrier entry because of cost. They think these products are for enterprise, large organizations, and they can't front the bill in a sense. But there's a lot of free tooling out there, a lot of free learning as well, to the point where it can get you started. You can test the waters before you go ahead and sign up at Full Sail for a full degree.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, speaking of your degrees, I'm curious if you don't mind sharing, did getting a master's help you in your careers at all? How has it impacted your careers?
Yeah, I love to chime on that first if I can. I started off my career at NASA as an undergrad doing web applications at the Marshall Flight Space or Space Flight Center, and in Huntsville, Alabama. And I was at a point where I wanted to pivot my career, so I always thought of going back to Full Sail or doing something with Full Sail. And I did research, and I knew that data analytics or data science was going to be big. At that time, Hadoop was just taking off, Cloudera, all these different terms. But working for an organization like NASA, there were some things that were on cutting edge, and they weren't willing to pivot or move so quickly into that area. But I decided to research Full Sail again, and I seen the business intelligence program, dug into it a little deeper, and it happened to be a wonderful program for me. My friends laughed because they didn't know what it was, and they're like, "Don't choose that career path." Even when I talked to a recruiter at Full Sail, they were kind of leading me. Well, why don't you do web development or something like that, because of your background or what you're doing now. But I just kind of saw the future, and I feel like Full Sail seen it with me, and that turned out great. Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, Vanderbilt University Medical Center called me up, and we had a conversation. They were looking for a business intelligence analyst, and I was one of the first people they seen that was pursuing a master's degree in that field. And I was 4 months before finishing, and they said, "Don't even worry about that." So that changed my career path dramatically.
Wow. Oh, thank you for sharing that. That is incredible. And congratulations for being an early adopter. We're going to talk a little
Yes.
bit more about early adoption with AI in a second. Dustin, do you want to share a little about how this has impacted you?
Yeah, sure. So, I spent the first part of my adulthood in the military, and I went to Full Sail first for the audio production degree, and I really enjoyed that. But it's actually funny because I was introduced to business intelligence by some video that I saw originally in the audio production degree, but it really didn't have anything to do with BI. It was a TED talk. Um, and so I found myself getting more and more into those and started, back then there was a lot of buzzwords of big data and things like that were going around. And so I started exploring into it. And almost immediately after finishing audio production, I saw that Full Sail had offered that. And I decided to kind of jump on board, And, I just wanted to dig into and learn more about it. And then I was introduced to tools like Power BI and things. And you had said, is Excel a good enough platform to start? And at that time, it was Microsoft Word and Excel. I was pretty good at those things, but all these other tools I didn't. But as I kind of expanded out and started really digging into okay, this is Power BI. What tools does Microsoft have that feeds into these? And I guess just as he had said a while ago, is after I had got done, there is so much opportunity within this, within this career field, right? It seems like there's more jobs than there are people in this field, so it's been a great success.
Awesome. Well, wonderful. Congratulations to you as well. So speaking about more jobs than people and new tools and innovation. I'm going to get into the controversial topic maybe. Bryce, we'll start with you, and then if anyone wants to add on, can you talk a little bit about how you see the role of artificial intelligence and machine learning evolving in the context of BI?
Yeah, in many cases, I know we talked before the call. Dustin mentioned some great points about how AI is helping his organization complete certain tasks a little bit faster, not taking away the work, but in a sense, we're allowing you to be a little bit more efficient. So I think AI ML is like becoming like the superheroes in a sense of BI, automating certain tasks, cleaning up messy data. But it's in that Clark Kent phase right before Superman just kind of opens up his buttons, and then you see the logo. So we're not quite there yet. People are still trying to figure it out. Organizations, large organizations, and individuals who consume it. But I think that it means more accurate forecasts, better decision making. But the key words I would like to point out is just access and democratization of that information. So there are certain tools that we have in preview at Google. It's called like visual assistant and formula assistant, automatic slide generation, report generation assistant. So typical dashboards or information always end up going into some type of presentation, whether it's a dashboard or it goes into a slide deck. So imagine having information that you already built out, whether it's a Looker or somewhere, and you want to be able to pull that information directly into your slide deck and create certain visualizations to it. And you may not have the code. Maybe you don't have the certain template or the certain modules to actually create that visual storytelling. But there's so many tools that are being powered by LLMs to to make that jump, that leap a little bit more efficient, a little bit more quicker and exciting as well.
I love that Superman analogy. That's such a great way to look at it. And one of the things we did talk about earlier, and maybe there's a kind of a fear out there that, oh, AI is going to come in here and take all of our jobs. So it sounds like, and I know Dustin has an opinion on this, that maybe that fear, we don't have to worry about that just yet.
Yeah.
Dustin, tell us a little more.
Yeah, as I was saying when we were discussing before the show, I remember watching in 2020, and they were having discussions by 2025, AI will take over 70% of everything, and this is coming from the people who were developing it. Of course, it's always kind of that lingering thing there. But right now, I see it as an awesome opportunity, right? Because now we have these tools such as Copilot and ChatGPT that can really help accelerate some of the things that we were getting stuck on before, right? So whereas maybe we would have to contract out to outside consulting firms and stuff like that, we're able to bring those things in house and figure out some of those problems that we previously weren't.
Okay, great. So it's to keep in the superhero analogies, it's like the Robin to our Batman right now.
Yeah.
Not quite a bad guy quite yet. Rebecca, I know you touch on these subjects in your programs. Do you want to share your opinions on AI?
Sure. Yeah. I would agree with the other panelists, Dustin and Bryce. I think that it's going to evolve our jobs. It's kind of like a calculator in terms of you still need to understand the underlying mathematical equation in order to be able to input it in a meaningful way into the calculator. It's the same way with AI. You still need to be able to use certain prompts in a way that's going to actually get you what you need it to give you. And so we will be training things like how to write those prompts in a meaningful way, how to get the output that you're looking for. And then also the other reason why it's going to evolve our jobs and not replace our jobs is because we always have to have a human in the loop in terms of checking the material, because AI does what we call hallucinate, where it will confidently give you the wrong answer sometimes. So having somebody who's an expert there to double check the information is also really important. It will just make sure that as we're doing those things, that our jobs are done more efficiently and that we can offload the repetitive tasks onto something like AI versus having us do them ourselves.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, I had somebody, I'm not going to know the source, but somebody quoted talking about AI that they imagined that, in the future, when artificial intelligence and robots were a thing, that they'd be doing the things that they didn't want to do, like the laundry and washing the dishes, and not taking over the fun things like creating art and, the things that you want to have that free time for. So I'm happy to hear Rebecca say that that is actually happening as well, and hopefully we can keep growing that space. Um, I want to kind of go back a little bit into, you know, how businesses can use these tools and these skills. So, Dustin, I'm going to ask you, and then we'll move in. I'm going to come to Bryce as well. Do you have any advice for organizations looking to upgrade or maybe scale their BI tools and infrastructure?
Yeah, so I would say, especially, because I focus more on the small business sector of things, I would say, to start small and build off of that, right? It can sometimes be a challenge to try to go all in, right? Because that's huge organizational change, especially when we're talking about in a small business sector, right? So being able to slowly introduce different pieces of this and build off of it, but importantly, when you are going that route, making sure you have a good solid plan, and having the data structure that's going to drive all that, right? That's kind of the anchor that holds it all together. So once you kind of know the objectives that you're looking for, you can start trying to figure out how you can start roll out these things.
Great. And Bryce, this is kind of the space that you work in, right? You help advise customers on this
Yeah.
exact thing. So how do how what's your process?
I guess the biggest thing is understanding the customer's customer, understanding their client, their end goal, and how what type of product they want to deliver to their customer. So we partner with them in that journey, right? And then understanding the architecture of their environment. That what are they trying to accomplish? What they didn't like in the past of previous tools. What are they migrating from? What do they want to improve? So it's a lot of questions, a lot of information gathering that goes into it. And then I guess it gets to the point of hands on. You got to get your hands onto the product, whether a POC, and there's so many different partners. So for we can work directly with our customers at Google, but at the same time we have wonderful partners out there who are willing to hop in. Even other AI organizations like Anthropic, where we are promoting other models, so giving people the freedom to use something like Llama and those things like that nature. And then I said it before, it's a huge importance to have how your tooling underneath the hood, where is your data being stored, and how is that being pulled into a certain platform like Tableau or Power BI. So BigQuery has huge recognition in the data analytics space and data storage spaces as well.
Great. So the people who come to the two of you have already kind of been sold on, okay, data is important and we can use this as our superpower to then advance our business.
Mhm.
So Rebecca, I want to come to you and I want to know, can you please share, let me reword this. How can organizations foster a data-driven culture so that they can use these BI tools? And sometimes people are not always willing to evolve with technology. So, do you have any advice in that space?
Yes, creating buy-in as much as you possibly can. And the way to create buy-in is to ask, just like how Bryce said, ask your customer what they need and what their customers need. So, for example, a lot of times we forget that, we are like we might be presenting to executives, we might be presenting to C-level execs, like we were talking about earlier. But as Dustin said, you might also want dashboards that are a little bit deeper into the problems, like what a junior level software developer is looking for is very different than what a C-level exec is looking for, but both need to use data in order to answer the questions that they have. Usually, the way that I like to phrase it is like, if you have a question the data can answer at any level, you can tap into that throughout your organization, and that's how you create that buy-in.
So, then would you say that it's important for employees at all levels to really, have an understanding of business intelligence and how to utilize these things?
I wouldn't say necessarily like a full understanding. I would definitely say that, being able to utilize things like Tableau or Power BI and having regular dashboards that they check in on would be helpful, because a lot of times we forget like what our metrics are from day to day. Like we might have a roadmap, we might have a strategic plan, we might have something. But being able to look back and say, okay, are we actually meeting these objectives is really important. So being able to have that viewpoint at any point by just logging into Tableau is really helpful for any level.
Great, thank you. So in the line of skills, Dustin, what skills should data professionals and business leaders prioritize to maximize the potential for BI within their organizations?
Um, I would say one of the most important skills when you're talking about business intelligence is an understanding of data, data governance and data structures, right? Because that's kind of the meat and potatoes of the whole thing. And I can't, I know that Omar stressed that a couple times, and I like to piggyback off that, right? Because without a good data structure and all that, then the rest of it falls apart. So being able to whatever tools your organization may be able to use, being able to jump in there and utilize those tools to their fullest capabilities.
Thank you. Bryce, did you have anything you wanted to add in that?
Just brief. I guess we can get too caught up in tooling or the actual platform, the BI platform itself. But I agree with doesn't it's saying the idea of understanding that structure, making sure that structure is correct. I recall my first days as a BI analyst for the medical center, and I was dealing with anesthesiology data, and it was complicated because I really had to understand the business from a perspective of medical terms, and if I don't understand that, and I have a hard time producing what is needed by the doctors, as for certain dashboards. So being familiar with their data in your organization, what are the end goals, having that conversation across verticals and organizations and departments, and really trying to dig deep. So a lot of that is communication too, beyond just the technical stuff is important.
I have an awesome phrase that I like to use with the students, which was taught to me, and that is garbage in, garbage out. And that basically means that if your data is not organized in a way that is meaningful, then sometimes the output is going to give you not what you want, right? And so it's really important to make sure that as you're putting your data pipeline together, one of the things that you spend a significant amount of time on is trying to make sure that you are utilizing the data in an appropriate way.
Absolutely. So the third class in the business intelligence program is enterprise data management, and it's all about making sure that you have that foundation, because if you start off with everything, disorganized and using the wrong information, it's just going to be a lot more to clean up later. I'm curious if either or any of you have experienced that, where you've worked for a company that the foundation was really cracked, and you had to kind of go back and fix it, and what tools did you use to do that?
Um, yeah, so I think that's common, especially when you have businesses that are experiencing growth, right? Because when a business starts out and it starts becoming successful, it's really common for them to be flying by their seat of their pants. They're throwing in solutions, where they can to make things work, and it works until it doesn't. But that's not anything that's uncommon, I guess is what I'm getting at, right? And it really, once you start looking into implementing these tools, is when those cracks start to show. And a lot of times, those aren't negative things as well. Because you can almost figure out the processes that need to go into place in order to drive those data decisions by looking at how, how did these cracks come about? Why did they make these decisions to do this? And then that helps you optimize the process to have better insight later on.
So it can be a good indicator.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
yeah,
great.
exactly.
Bryce, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I would say it starts to bleed into the security aspect of things, access and roles and permissions. Because when an organization starts to scale, more people are given access. Maybe they shouldn't have it, or a certain level of access, and it comes to get to a point where you dirty up the data, or and it's important that certain data scientists have a certain type of access, and you got business users who probably shouldn't have a lot of access. They should have been a little bit more granular to the data, and that's important to establish too across your organization in the beginning, but also as you continue to scale out. How do you handle version control of that data? But also, how do you protect that data, whether it's from internal threats or external threats as well?
Okay, so this is kind of in the same vein. So it might be a little repetitive, but speaking of, these indications that, okay, we're growing. Now what? How can BI play a role in identifying new opportunities for growth within a company when it's not a crack? Like, so it's not the mistake that shows you that there's this opportunity. What else can you use BI for to grow?
Yeah. So BI can show you opportunities, from different levels, right? So to give an example, maybe it can give you better insights into maybe customer segments that you just weren't able to see before. One of the most interesting TED Talks that I ever watched before, and I still hang on to it to this day, is where they were talking about how for the longest time they always thought that the apple pie was like the most famous apple pie. And really, after Walmart, I think it was, they implemented, when they first started putting business intelligence in, they actually found out that they had started putting the little single piles or the little smaller pies in, right? And they actually found out that I think apple pie was maybe the third or fourth. I don't want to get it wrong, but it actually, when a person had the individual choice, it wasn't the apple pie, but everybody had that assumption just because that's what you hear all the time. And so that, from that, they had then got an opportunity to where they now have the pies that have the slices with the different flavors in there, the cherries and the apples and the peach, and it has kind of the variety pack in there. And then those ended up selling really well. And then they know how to do their individuals. So that's kind of one of those things that a lot of times in businesses, you make assumptions that are emotionally driven. But whereas when the data kind of actually starts showing you some opportunities that maybe you have missed before.
I love that example. I wouldn't have thought that either.
Now I want apple pie.
Yeah.
No, right.
I have no comment, but apple pie. Well said.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I probably botched that all up, but
Oh, no, that's good. I would say, like, to add on to that, in terms of how businesses can grow using BI, is I actually have, like, my best friend from grad school. She works in human resources and she does data science stuff for like various companies. And they just look at things like, how can we grow our company? How can we add more people to the team? How can we keep people, particularly, high performing people that are doing really well, like just by looking at things like job satisfaction. And so there's a lot of ways that you can grow that you might not necessarily readily think of. But human resources is another area where you can kind of look for jobs that might be, uh, you know, helpful for you if you're looking to help a company grow.
That's a really great point. I know a couple of people in human resources that use data quite a bit in their roles, actually. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about the future, and then we have some questions coming in from online. So I'd love to get those in as well. But my last question is, looking ahead, how do you envision business intelligence evolving over the next 5 to 10 years, particularly as more organizations embrace this digital transformation that we're in? And maybe we can start with Dustin and go to Bryce and Rebecca.
yeah. So I see kind of a rapid growth in the small business sector, right? More and more people are now having the opportunity to use these tools. And that's only going to continue to grow. It's getting cheaper. We have cloud technologies that doesn't require all the big data infrastructures, the on-premise servers and things like that. And now that those tools are available, and with the emergence of like the AIs and things like that, the implementation of these projects is getting easier and easier, right? And so yeah, that's really where I see it going, is that we have, more and more opportunity to have these tools available to us, whereas before it was kind of reserved for a small sector.
Like the original car phones and then cell
Yeah.
phones and
Yeah.
VCRs. And okay, all right,
Got it.
great. Love that. Bryce, how about you?
Yeah, well said, Dustin. I would say just think about the power of language for just a moment and how much more enriching it is when you go traveling, and the experience that you can have if you can speak the local language. So just think about how deeper that connection is when you visit that culture, right? And now you're imagining that you in the world of data and you can speak the language of that data. So if you were able to imagine yourself just asking your data questions in plain English to just receive immediate actionable insights, that's the future. This is kind of changing the game, similar how platforms, how like Amazon revolutionized retail and making it accessible for everyone to buy certain things, or how fintech apps like Robinhood or in Coinbase, they democratize like access to financial markets. It's the same vein. AI and ML, they're opening up data analytics to a broader audience within certain companies. So for years we needed to learn complex languages like Python, like we said, in SQL to truly speak to the data. But now you can actually have like almost a translator to ask simple questions, and you can use natural language, typing or speaking, chat with your data, and that's incredible potential technology. It's constantly being developed. We have even a product, conversational analytics at Looker, um, that's in preview that people can play around with, and you basically ask plain questions to get more insights out of the data, allow it to build out complex dashboards. And it's not getting rid of the data scientists. You always have a need for them, but it's allowing other users to tap into the world to aid in that the discovery as well, whether they know a language or not. So I think that's a huge thing. And then for the data professionals, you got BigQuery Data Canvas, where it allows those individuals to have a little deeper and more efficient way of digging into their raw data.
I love that. What exciting times we live in, right? It's an amazing technological revolution. Rebecca, I see. Did you want to add to this?
Yeah, I'm on mute. Sorry. I would like to piggyback on Bryce's conversation about language. And one of the things that I've seen in particularly AI that I think is really cool is the growth of language models. And it's kind of counterintuitive to what I just say with growth, but we're actually like looking at small language models now and how useful small language models can be. And small language models essentially are just like a domain specific language model. So a Power BI language model or a business intelligence language model, which it kind of just takes out all of the fluff that you don't necessarily need, which is really cool because you can get more meaningful information from those prompts as you move forward. That's one way I can see it growing. And then the other way I can see it growing, particularly in emerging technologies, is utilizing dashboards within things like VR headsets and AR headsets. We've started doing those things, but making that more widely available so that when we're training people that we can actually have more meaningful conversations about their performance. So a lot of times in military groupings, we do what we call an after action review, and being able to pull something up and say, here's the data on your performance right there. So you can give immediate feedback, which is the most helpful form of feedback. That's also a really cool thing that I think is going to grow quite a bit with AI and particularly business intelligence.
Awesome. Thank you. So we do have some questions from online. The first one, and this is whoever wants to answer. If I got a degree in business intelligence versus computer science, so perhaps Rebecca is actually the right person to answer this one. How do the careers post graduation differ from each other? Any examples? So maybe Rebecca, you could speak to the computer science careers, and then Bryce and Dustin, since you've had careers in the BI space and crossover, share a little bit about all of the different opportunities that you've had. So Rebecca, you can start.
Sure. So I would say, based off of what I've seen, and part of what my dissertation was looking at was job postings and particularly domain specific jobs and what are being asked of those. From what I've seen is that like the salary level are generally around the same thing, around the same area, depending on the level of job that you're going for, whether it's a junior, mid level, or a higher level job. So I don't know if there's necessarily too much of a difference between the salary levels, but there are going to be different things that you're going to be asked to do. So it depends on what you like to do. I would suggest looking into a day in the life of a programmer. And that's usually what a computer scientist is going to do versus the day in the life of a business intelligence professional. And you can kind of see a little bit of the differences. So the computer scientist is typically going to be in a engine or a development environment of some kind and going to be coding on a day-to-day basis, where maybe a business intelligence professional might be working in something like Tableau or Power BI.
Thank you. Okay, Dustin and Bryce, what do you think about differences in careers, and if you have any examples of careers? Obviously, we have your two careers, and you both did the
Yeah,
business intelligence degree, but I know there's some CS crossover there.
yeah, definitely a lot of crossover in some cases, depending on the organization that you will be working with. I think it's important to understand the other concepts outside of. So, say for instance, when I started my BI career, uh, I had to catch up a little bit in the sense of working with ETL or ELT tools, extracting, loading, transforming that data, and that could vary depending on how you do it. But that's a key thing of spending time to understand and see if you actually like that. There's phenomenal different resources out there to kind of break down that that concept and how you collect data, how you transform that raw data. And then the fun part, a lot of times we think that we're just going to go out and start building dashboards and visualizations, but it's the cleaning and the constantly changing and tuning of that data underneath is important. So familiarizing yourself, if you actually want to be an all-star analyst, because you may not have the title of a business intelligence analyst, so don't just necessarily go searching for that, but some type of analyst or data analytics professional, you want to familiarize yourself with SQL. You want to familiarize yourself with Python and other languages that might be up and coming and certain tooling. And I'll add the last thing is prompt engineering. It's something that I am studying myself as well. That is a career of its own as well. Knowing how to write out the correct prompts to get the right answer out of LLMs is very important. That's a career in itself. And I think that more people should definitely look into it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to let everyone know that we've added an SQL workshop quarterly to the program. So we don't necessarily dive into SQL as much as in the computer science program, but it is so important and it is so complementary to the careers in the business intelligence space that our instructors recognize that, and also our advisory committee recommended it. And so now we've added that every quarter so that our students can be exposed to it and do some learning even outside of just the basic program that they're learning here.
Yeah.
Did you have?
Yeah. So I mean, it's such a broad, right? There's so many different career paths it could branch down to. When I first started the degree program, I kind of imagined myself just building dashboards all day, right? And there is some of that out there, but from my experience, a lot of companies are going to want that, plus several other skills, but those skills can vary so much. So, really from a suggestion point, if you're looking into it, I would say what interests you the most out of it, right? Because, I kind of discovered that for me, it's a lot more interesting to find out creative ways to collect that data, right? So the tools that their users are using every day, how do we implement things and improve on things to be able to collect that data without impeding on the user's daily job, right? Because a lot of times, whenever things get rolled out, maybe the end user's jobs throughout the organization, the tasks that they start doing day in day out, they start growing exponentially, right? And all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, this isn't going to work just to kind of get this dashboard. So it's actually kind of a fun puzzle of, how can I grab these pieces of data, and not only make it easier make it easier on the user, right? Maybe improve on their daily tasks, but still get the data we need, right, in the background. So that's there's just so many opportunities with it.
Thank you.
Also like to expand because one of the things that I think might be helpful for anybody new coming into a master's program and I might not know, should I go business intelligence or should I go computer science? One of the things that Victoria and I have to do in our everyday job is trying to figure out what titles students might be looking out for as careers. And in computer science, we typically see things like data scientist, data analyst, data engineer, and you can even go beyond that to like AI or machine learning engineer. And then Victoria, I don't know what kind of titles you typically will look at, but usually I would expect things like data analysts around the.
Yes, that's the kind of a little bit confusing, right? Because we do overlap there. We do have a lot of
Yes.
students who end up having a title of data analyst or, data strategic business analyst is another one. So sometimes you'll see the word business thrown in there. I think if you are somebody who really likes programming, and everyone here, correct me if I'm wrong. So if you're really into the programming and the code, maybe the computer science side is more your speed. And if you're more into the business decisions and that, how do I advise people like the CEOs at a company, or how can I as a business owner take this information to grow my business? And it's really more about implementing the strategic business decisions from the data. Then you'd probably want to come into our program because we show you the tools to understand all that information and then tell that story. It's a lot about storytelling and effective communication. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have another question from online. How can business intelligence be used to optimize project management processes such as resource allocation and timeline forecasting to ensure more efficient project delivery and strategic growth?
Loaded one.
That's a long question. Yes, it's a
uh,
big.
I would say that it all depends on from what perspective are you looking to allocate certain resources. I mean, you could be talking about supply chain. You could be talking about an organization managing, like I said before, their cloud costs. I'll just give an example from my situation. Organization utilizing GKE or Google Cloud Kubernetes engine. So they're managing a fleet of what they call nodes and pods, and these things are certain applications that are running on these things, and it's important to be able to monitor those things. And you will need a dashboard. You will need something that alerts you. And sometimes organizations are so quick to build and not necessarily monitor with visualization and knowing how to notify themselves or important people who could catch an issue when it happens. So there's various tools depending on what you're utilizing. Um, Business intelligence is everywhere. Whenever you see something visual that is that's displaying data, and there's some type of underlying data, raw data that most people will just look at a bunch of numbers and it doesn't mean anything, but it gives you back something meaningful where this has happened over time, or this may happen if you're using predictive analytics. That's business intelligence, and that drives decision, that drives value. So you're getting certain actionable insights. Once you get that data, then you take action, and now you have business intelligence.
I can give a specific example of how we utilize business intelligence type information for resource allocation. So people are a resource in your organization. And so one of the things that we do is we actually track things like how many classes our instructors teaching to make sure that we're not overloading them, which is really a cool way of being able to utilize BI for resource allocation. We can look at the number of students that are in a class or whatever, however it may be, however, what variables you're looking at and how you weight those variables is up to your organization. But it's a really cool way of being able to share that information across different levels, like we were talking about before. So, people who are in executive positions can approve positions, whereas people underneath can also justify, hey, I might need more people because we have an increase of end users or whatever it may be.
Thank you. And this is, I mean, what a great question because it also highlights another job title that, I mean, a project manager can
Hmm.
also really benefit from an understanding of business intelligence and data analytics. All of that goes into that career as well. That's a whole other specialty, but all of these things, if you have this great toolbox to pick from, you can be that much stronger and more effective, right? So, another question. What industries do you feel are leaders in leveraging BI and which need to catch up? Oh, another good one. Who
I
wants
can
to go first?
speak to. I guess I can speak to my experience being in. I coming from being a business intelligence analyst for the Vanderbilt University Medical Center at one point, and then transitioning a few years later into Google. And I started off in the healthcare life sciences department prior to being on the Web3 team. And I think that there was a mad dash for a lot of healthcare organizations to catch up when it comes to what to do with their data, especially during COVID. It was great for us. It was business, and we were, helping them modernize and digitalize their information. But it's kind of scary in a certain sense where there's so many different silos, different islands of data across different hospitals and different systems, and there's not a lot of synergy there. So utilizing a certain product where it's you have this data lake, or you have a data analytics warehouse where you gather all the information, and now you attach on something like a BI tool like Looker, and then you be able to display that information in a more clean manner across different providers and et cetera. So I I would have to say that, you know, having certain tool sets in place and having the understanding of that every vertical can benefit from BI, but just from a perspective of depending on, you know, what times you live in, that may change, but I think healthcare is a place where there's a lot of room and growth for that.
Well said. Did either of you want to? Oh, I see Rebecca. You are muted.
Areas, sorry, I realized I was on mute. The areas that are probably doing really well, from what I've seen at least, are ones where they already kind of understood the value of data. Fields where like statistics may be important for them. So things like healthcare, things like computer science, we're seeing a lot of early adoption in those areas. There are areas where I think that because of the accessibility of the tools, they're just now starting to get access to those types of systems. Um, so I like, I'm not 100% sure, but I have heard some struggles with particularly like K through 12 education because they're not as funded as some of our like huge organizations, right? And so some of the things that we're starting to see is use and adoption in K through 12 space, which I think is fantastic, and also nonprofit as well.
Absolutely. And I would say, let's not forget about, the entire marketing world. I think because they operate so much on data, right? And they need the SEO, they need all of that information. So that space, we do have a lot of students who come from like a marketing background and they want to strengthen their understanding of how to use all of the information that they're getting from all of these digital platforms to then kind of inform their strategy when it comes to marketing. So that would be another space. And then look at Netflix. I mean, they were an early adopter, I would say, of using data to figure out what kinds of shows to produce and how to figure out, what to show on your dashboard when you sign into Netflix to reveal to you maybe a show that you didn't know you wanted to watch, and now it's your favorite one. So,
Well, I have
it's
homework for the
everywhere.
audience as well that relates to that. If the audience would check out Dune Analytics, so it's a platform to allow people to look at, or even DeFi Llama. It allows you to look at the amount of transactions and money that's being moved on the blockchain across various Web3 products. So that's a space where it's still emerging, and there's a lot of data there, and people will be able to use institutions now that Bitcoin, Ethereum, all these things are going into institutions with ETFs. How do you look at and analyze the inflow and the outflow of large quantity of money into these assets? So that's important too.
Such a great point. And if the question of who needs to catch up, one thing you might want to look at is people who don't, maybe aren't collecting data where they should be, or they don't have an app. Not that everybody has to have an app, but if you've noticed, a lot of people do, and it's because it's a great way to collect a lot of information about your customers and about their kind of activities. So if the question is because you're kind of looking for opportunities, that would be a great way to get started. Look at what you're interested in. Think about what information is being collected about you in your day-to-day life, and then how that could then be enhanced with these BI tools that we talked about today. So, great. Right. Well, we have another question, excuse me. So, is there a danger in becoming too reliant on LLMs or BI? And what actions can we take to prevent over-reliance on any one resource or technology?
Yeah, I can start there. Yeah. So, as far as the data, I think just knowing what your objective is with the tool, right? When we say an over reliance, I think there can be some dangers when we're talking about forecasting and things like that, right? Because predictive analytics have really, they've grown and they can be very useful. But it would be really dangerous to look at a forecasting tool and just kind of put all your chickens in that basket, right? You still have other things, with that human component into it, right? That are going to let you know where you need to pivot here and there, and to even go back in and maybe what's driving the forecast and that data, and what points is this model not seeing that we need to add in to kind of correct that forecast and get a better trend in there, right? So, as of right now, there is still that human element that is a very important role in being able to understand that data. Because in the end, that data is just a tool, another tool in the bucket to use to make your day-to-day decisions.
Which then goes back to our conversation that it's not going to completely replace us yet, because
Yeah.
we still have, we know humans better, well, so far, better than the AI knows humans. Now I'll probably
I'm glad that
regret
I'm
saying
glad
that,
that you
but
mentioned I'm glad that you mentioned models because one of the things that's really important for everyone to remember is that no model is accurate because it's a simplification of what's actually happening. But some models are useful.
yes,
So.
well put. Bryce, did you have anything you wanted to add in this one?
Uh, yeah, security, I mentioned it briefly. I think that as AI continues to evolve, or as we continue to evolve certain BI tooling, security is always plays a important role. So, enhancing the I guess the way that we monitor or look at the footprint of who has access to what and what are they doing. And one thing I'll say is a lot of organizations may be playing around with AI and don't try to use the consumer version, the retail version, whether it's the Gemini one that you go to, or even ChatGPT, the actual consult with the organization themselves, like from an enterprise or consultancy standpoint. And there's a vast difference between the enterprise version versus regular versions on what's being done with the data. You want to put important information or your company data onto certain public websites. You want to have some understanding in a more clear controlled environment.
Absolutely. I can, from a legal standpoint, it is just such an important thing that you aren't putting your proprietary information. So that's a great just pointer for anyone who's, maybe working at a company and wanting to really dive into this space and make a name for themselves at their company. Be very careful about the internal information that you are now plugging into public facing tools because they are not necessarily safe. So it's great to play around, but maybe don't use the proprietary information. Kind of show what's possible, and then get the approval to get the enterprise version so that you can have that security. And we have a whole lesson on data breach and what to do if you accidentally leak a bunch of private information in the business intelligence program. Just so you know. Did you have something you wanted to add?
No.
Okay. All right. And this is the last question. So, is there a danger in sorry. That was the last question. Pardon. Well, I want to thank all of our guests for taking the time to be here today. We are so grateful for your insights and for you sharing all of the different tips and tricks that you gave us. I also wanted to share with our online folks to be on the lookout for the October publication of the Orlando Magazine. We are actually going to be featured. The Business Intelligence Program is going to be featured in the Faces of Orlando section. So make sure to read that. We can learn a little bit more about what we have to offer here at Full Sail. So thank you all again, and I hope you have a wonderful day.